You know, you can spend $2,000 on an amp, or you can move your speakers 6 inches and get better results. And that's not clickbait or pseudoscience, it's physics. Proper speaker placement can make your system sound huge, balanced, detailed. You can surround yourself with the band with perfect soundstage and imaging, because no $2,000 amp can make a speaker sound good if it's not in the right place. So today we're gonna fix that. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about why speaker placement even matters.
Can't unhear it. I can't unhear it.
Sound doesn't stop at the front of your speaker. Sound goes all the way around your speaker. Bounces off walls, off of ceilings, off of floors. Cats, dogs, IKEA furniture. You name it, sound interacts with it. Every reflection changes timing, it changes tone, messes with imaging. That's why a $300 pair of speakers can sound absolutely amazing in one room and absolutely terrible in another. Which is why auditoriums, concert halls generally have domed ceilings, weirdly shaped walls. If they're designed for acoustics, then it's probably not designed like your living room. Think of placement like taking pictures, photography. You could have the best lens, but if it's out of focus, the picture is still going to be blurry. Research from Floyd Toole shows that even tiny shifts in arrival time between reflections can make a stereo image collapse or suddenly snap into focus. And the best thing about it, speaker placement costs $0, which is exactly the amount of money you have left after you buy a bunch of hi-fi gear. $0. All of the music in today's video was made by me using Suno. I use music all the time in my videos, and I have a subscription to a royalty-free music site, which is awesome, but it takes forever to find the perfect track to set the perfect mood. With Suno, I don't have to do any of that. I created a track using sitar down-tuned guitars, and I told Suno to make it 140 beats per minute, and it did it! I also created a cheap audio man's anthem.
This is the cheap audio man's anthem.
I also created a song that says I love speakers, amps, and turntables, and they're actually good. I mean, legitimately good. And if you want to edit, you just pop into their editor and you can change whatever you want. And if you're not a YouTuber like me, create a song for your wife, create a song for your mom, your brother. Surprise them at your next family reunion with a fun 1950s style rock and roll song, including all of your favorite family members' names.
Terry's laughing, she don't care. Randy's got that wide stare.
I think if you give Suno a try, you're going to have a lot of fun. I lost hours playing around with it. So go to suno.com, use the link in the description, and go make some music. When sound hits a wall, especially a corner, it reflects and even stacks up. The closer your speakers are to a wall, the more the lower frequencies get reinforced. And it's free bass. Frequencies between 50 and 100 hertz especially reflect. And in a lot of cases, smaller speakers need that, and we should be using that. Boundary reflections can also cause issues or dips in the frequency response. It's called the speaker boundary interference response. Back in the 1970s, Roy Allison measured how corners can actually boost bass. A speaker 6 inches from the wall can sometimes sound boomy. Move it out a little bit, and all of a sudden, it's balanced now.
Oh, that's much better.
And that's the fun, because this is a game of inches, just like football. Or golf, apparently. And you can wear plaid pants, just like in golf, when you enjoy Jeff Buckley. If your big towers sound boomy, pull them out into the room. Thin, shove them next to the wall or into a corner. But what about ports? What if the port's in the front and not the back? You've probably heard that rear-ported speakers shouldn't go right up against the wall, or that front-ported speakers can go right up against the wall. It's not really true. And here's why. Because bass frequencies are huge. A 40 hertz wave is about 28 feet long. It doesn't care whether you have a front port or a rear port. Both those speakers are going to act the exact same when they're a foot from the wall. If your rear ported speakers sound boomy against a wall, it's not the port's fault. A front ported speaker would sound boomy in the same position. Front ported speakers can help a little, but what really helps the speaker is how it was tuned. And if you can't pull the speaker away from the wall and they're still a little bit boomy, try plugging the port. Probably not going to make a huge difference, but it might. I used to use diapers to plug my ports. Not used diapers, fresh diapers, or a pair of socks.
Something socks.
Socks?
Preferably clean socks. But a lot of speakers aren't tuned to be exactly flat. Some are built to play in, well, normal rooms. In fact, some designers actually bake in this curve when they design a speaker.
You're overcomplicating it.
Ever heard of the Fletcher-Munson curve? That's what was used for the loudness button or loudness control on a lot of vintage receivers. It's how our ears hear sound at different volume levels. At lower volumes, our ears don't hear bass and treble as loudly as they hear voices in the mid-range. Most speaker designs actually take that into account. So there's a bit of a gentle rise in the lows and the highs. It's called a room curve. No tinfoil hat needed. That's just how people design their speakers because they know an ultra flat speaker sounds like garbage at lower volumes. Harman did a bunch of research and they showed that listeners prefer a little bit of a rise in the bass and a response that tilts down just a little bit, about 1 decibel per octave from treble to bass, bass to treble. That's why some speakers sound better than others at lower volumes. A true ruler flat speaker is only going to sound its best at a specific reference volume, and most people don't listen at reference volumes. So if a speaker sounds a little bit gutless on the bottom or too bright, it might have nothing to do with your room. It may just be that the speaker was designed that way. If you think I'm overthinking this, it's too complicated, don't worry. My family thinks the same thing, especially when I start moving furniture around at about 10 p.m. to mess with speaker placement. But speaking of furniture, not every room, not every family will allow you to have giant obelisks, big tower speakers. Sometimes a smaller speaker actually sounds better.
Well, size isn't everything, I guess.
Big floor standing speakers look impressive, kind of like you have a concert hall. But in a small room, they can overpower everything. And you can end up with a wall of bass, especially if you have a speaker near a corner. Smaller speakers in certain situations can actually sound way cleaner. And small speakers in a big room paired with a subwoofer can be just the ticket. Now you have the punch of a tower without the boom, and you have control because you can put that subwoofer wherever you want it to go. Hide the sub, fine tune it, change the crossovers. And if an audiophile is after the best sound, most of the time it's going to involve a subwoofer, unless you're in a perfect room with a speaker that's tuned exactly for your room at the volume that you listen to. How often does that happen? However, if you do have a lot of space, if you do have consistent sidewall boundaries, pulling those speakers all the way out into the room can do something absolutely magical. Probably the best demonstration of speaker placement is done by my buddy Ron Brené over at New Record Day. He has a video called LOTS. I think it stands for Loudspeaker Optimization something something. Anyway, it's about pulling the speakers away from the wall as much as you can to get the perfect soundstage. Not a couple of inches, not a little bit, 3, 4, even 5 feet. It may look ridiculous, but if you watch his video, which I will link, and you follow what he tells you to do, you're gonna get a presentation of the music that you probably never heard before. Pulling speakers all the way out into the room kills early reflections. It also kills the interaction of the room with the speaker. So depending upon how that speaker is voiced, not having the boundary reinforcement can make them sound much, much better. Remember the speaker boundary interference response? When you account for that by pulling your speakers out, everything gets better. Even 2 or 3 feet can give you noticeable improvements. And you don't need to spend anything to try it out, except maybe buy longer speaker cables.
My apartment was tiny.
Let's face it, most people don't have dedicated listening rooms. Don't even get me started on open concept rooms, similar to what I have. So you have to work with what you have. Point is, a little bit of furniture, some rugs, and you'll be surprised just how much of a difference it makes. I have 2 chairs on my wall. My wife had them reupholstered, and when we had them out of the room, it was amazing how much just those 2 chairs affected how it sounded, especially with soundstage and placement of things in space. If you have some room reinforcement, like I do in my room, a speaker is next to a corner, and that center image is getting pulled towards that speaker, you can kind of compensate for that by pulling the right speaker out a little bit more, so it's hitting your ears first. Or you can just use a balance control. But even if you had a perfect room, a perfect speaker at the perfect volume, what does perfect actually mean? In theory, the perfect setup is this, an equilateral triangle. Speakers at least 3 feet from the back wall, at least 3 feet from the side walls, and if you want to get even more technical, there's specific rules for your side walls. Then you would be the same distance from the speaker to speaker in front of the speaker, the equilateral triangle. And that goes all the way back to the BBC in the 1970s. They did research. In reality, though, most people don't have that option. I don't have that option. One speaker's next to my fireplace in a corner. One's to the right of the fireplace, but it fires off to the abyss of the kitchen eating area. My couch isn't even symmetrical in front of my speakers. And that's fine because I'm working with what I have. It's not about perfection, it's about balance. No pun intended. And I can get a sound that's perfect for me in a room that's not perfect. And a lot of times if you move yourself up, so you're not sitting at the point of the triangle, you move yourself into it a little bit, you can kind of get some of the benefits of the lots, what Ron talks about, without having to pull your speakers all the way out into the room. You pull yourself towards the speakers. Does it work always? No, but you can test this out if you have desktop speakers. Get all the way into the desktop speakers and listen for that soundstage. It's probably going to extend well beyond your back wall. How about some more tricks? Toe in just means how that speaker is facing you. Did you know that you can tame treble down by where your ear is at in conjunction with the tweeter? If the tweeter's at ear level, facing directly at your ear, that'll be the most treble that speaker can make. If it's too much, you can toe it out. Or get your ear above or below the tweeter. Too much bass? Pull it out into the room. Not enough bass? Shove it towards the wall. You want crazy soundstage? Toe those speakers all the way in until they're hitting your left shoulder. So if you drew a straight line between the tweeter, it would actually hit your shoulder, not your ear. The opposite shoulder. If you have a consistent room and you can do the equilateral triangle, do it. But if you can't, don't freak out. There's a ton of affordable equipment out there too that can help compensate for room issues. I know the Weem Ultra has room correction built in. A lot of home theater receivers have Dirac or other room compensation software. A lot of them come with a microphone. You just run the program and supposedly you're going to get perfect sound. But as we discussed earlier, not every speaker is tuned the same. Not every room is the same. And what you're going to get is somebody's idea of what perfect sound is. The problem is they don't have your ears. So you are the only one that needs to care about how it sounds. I'll put links in the description for resources if you want to learn more about this stuff. But all of this is a moving target, and all of this is contingent about how a speaker is designed. More importantly, how your room is designed. Personally, I usually go for a smaller tower speaker with less bass and a subwoofer, or even bookshelf speakers. And fixing too much bass because you have giant tower speakers is almost impossible. But you can add bass in and you don't have nearly as many issues. Just my 2 cents. So, if you really get excited by how things sound, you should start messing around with where your speakers are at before you start buying now. Because there's going to be a lot of sales coming up. Speaker placement is the biggest free upgrade in hi-fi. But only change one thing at a time and give it a while to listen to it in that location. Frankly, changing locations is going to completely change the sound of your speaker. Maybe that speaker doesn't need to be upgraded. Try more boundary reinforcement and less boundary reinforcement. Maybe put those speakers ultra wide. Do a little experiment. Go listen to your speakers right now and then move your head to the left, move your head to the right, move your head forward, and move your head aft, and you'll see that the bass will change and the center image will obviously change too. Test near field setups or move your chair closer to your speaker. Go watch that video Ron put out. It's wonderful. But decades of research from Harman all agree on one thing. A lot of what we hear is coming from our room and not from our gear. Put it in the comments. Where are your speakers at right now? What has been the best thing for you? Have you had an epiphany based upon speaker placement? If you don't have options to move your speakers around, what has been the best thing for you? Because great sound isn't about how much you spend. I guess it's kind of about where you put things, money included.